what can we upgrade as far as the ballast bags go on the Centurion Fi21? Those of you with the boat know that this bag sucks. It never relieves the air. The bags are basically almost bursting up here at the top, and the problem is that vent port back there goes up underneath, and so you have a higher spot in the middle here. So this is a 2018 Fi21 with the latest software. I'm just going to fill up the rear bags here, and I'll show you what they look like when they're full. And the plan is to get some different bags that will actually vent better. You can access the vents easier instead of crawling into the compartment every time and standing on it and pushing the air up. So if you haven't checked out the channel yet, please subscribe and look at the other Centurion videos. I've got some maintenance things like changing the oil quickly, and also some mods like adding a paddle wheel speed gauge. And for those of you who ride on the river, that's pretty handy to know what your actual water speed is. Right now I'm just filling this thing up, and we're going to see where this thing gets tight, and then this fitting right here gets wedged up underneath, and then all your air is trapped here. Now I burp this every time I do this, every time I fill them up, but it makes sense to me that if you had a bag with, you know, the vent in the middle and then the air release valve in the middle, that it'd be a lot better design. Also, when I was troubleshooting to see why air gets in here, I noticed that when I'm moored in a slip, it doesn't do that because the drain on the bottom is sealed. When you drain it, it's sealed because of the water, but then when you trailer it, the bag fills up with air, and this overflow vent does work, but when it gets to the point where the air is up here and there's water down there, it's trying to push that water out, and it just doesn't work. Alright, so you can see it's getting pretty fat here, and yes, I have the timer set properly, but there's air in there, which, you know, I could bleed out and it wouldn't be so fat, but you can see right here that this is below the air level, and frankly, you could actually have a vent back here too, which would be even easier to get to, but we're just going to show you the example here. I'm going to shut it off before it damages something. And then we've got water coming off the side already, and we're at 93%. Okay, so you can see where this bag is just the wrong bag for this boat. The vent should be up here and here, and that would stop the problem. So I'm going to do some measurements, and I'll show you which bags to get, and we'll go from there. I did some measuring, and the space in here is about 20 inches wide. The height of this bag is 18 inches, and it's about 40 inches or 42 inches long. Now these bags in the 2018 Fi21 are a 650, and your standard size normally you get from right around 750. Those are your standard size. So we're gonna see if we can find the proper size. And what you could do also, even if you put I think the width is the most critical part, because you don't want too much pressure on the side panel here. And so if you got a 750 that was the right width, you could just set the timer on these fills so that they didn't go all the way, you know, above here and, you know, cause pressure. So that might be the angle to go with. Get 750s, because this is probably a custom bag that Centurion had made. They just didn't think it through very well when they positioned everything up here, but I'm sure the thinking was that the boat's going to be sitting with the bow up and all the air is going to be up here, but when this is underneath, that's not the case. All right, so another problem we have here is they used a straight hose and then turned it up 90 degrees around the corner to get to this bag. So this hose sticks up and doesn't drain the bag all the way, and when you fold it over, you can see it's pinched. right here. You can't really see it very well from that angle, but there's a pinch in it, which slows down the drain. And so I'm gonna get a couple of elbows or 90s and fix that issue that they should have done at the factory. All right, so 2 days later, I get the WakeMakers bags that I selected to replace the stock bags that were in the Fi21. And these were 40 inch by 20 by 20s, 640 pounds. And the advertised stock bags are 650 pounds. So they're gonna be, you know, pretty close, probably exactly the same. They probably just rounded up on the other ones. Anyway, the benefit with this bag is you've got 2 ports on the top that are in the center, so we don't have that vent, those 2 vents hidden and squished up there on the front. And then another benefit with these bags are you've got ports on each end, so you could flip the bag around to use it for some other purpose, or, you know, different plumbing options. And so you got 2 back here, and then you got 1 more here. So it's really the perfect bag. It's got all the ports you need. The ports are positioned, you know, in a better place. So it's gonna be a much better deal. And then I've got some more fittings. Now, one of the things about the WakeMakers bags is that they have a 1-inch port here. And so I've got some old stuff off my Malibu here, but these are those quick connects, and they fit, the WakeMakers ports fit these, I think they're called quick locks or something like that. But anyway, they fit that, even though they're a 1-inch, and the tubing is the same. So you got to be careful, because the WakeMakers bags do have the 1-inch port here, which is the thread size, and then the quick lock fittings is standard though. So you can use these on these bags with your existing fittings, and that's the reason that they did that, so that you could make it easy. So if you've seen my other videos about the Centurion mods and other boat mods, you're gonna see that I use the Molly coat a lot, and I'll have a link down there in the description for this stuff. I'll have links down on the bottom for everything anyway. But I prefer to use this Molly coat lube on the ram fill gates, any plastic or rubber parts. I put a little light coating on the impeller when I install it. I think it's especially important to put it on these. That way you're able to take your fittings off and on easier, because you know how those can get sticky and worn out. But anyway, I'm going to coat both threads just lightly, and also the gaskets with the Molly coat. So I'm just going to pre-install some of these fittings where I think they're going to go in the boat, and I'm just going to put them hand tight for now, because I may want to swap this one with that one. We'll just kind of see how all the tubing fits when we get to the boat. But I've always got this wrench, this large adjustable wrench on the boat, and then we're not going to crank it down, but we're gonna cinch it down tighter than what I can do with my hand, just to make sure it doesn't back out and you know, drain in the boat or whatever. But don't crank them down tight, because you'll probably never get them back off again. So in the last segment of the beginning of this video, I showed you the kink in the hose in the back there, where they ran the hose up and then tried to turn it 90 degrees or 45 or whatever, and it kinked the hose. Well, these are the fittings that you're going to need to fix that. So the ballast hose comes up from the pump, kind of like that, and then it'll run around the corner and shoot straight into the bag like this. So this is how we're going to fix that. This is an 1 1/8" fitting. There's the label. You'll need 2 of those, because there's, you know, 2 bags back there. And then you need some hose clamps, and I got 4 just to be on the safe side. I also ordered the 1-inch elbows, but when we take this thing over here to the existing tubes that I had off the old Malibu setup, which I know is an 1 1/8", it slips right in there really nice. So that's how we know that. And you can kind of see when well, this stuff's pretty fresh still, it's never been bent, but when you bend the stuff 90 degrees, it pinches, and then you don't get the full flow rate of your pumps. So also in this kit that I ordered after I counted everything I needed, I got WakeMakers proprietary bag plugs, and these are also 1-inch port, and they do have an O-ring here, and they're also drilled so you can vent them. So they're also one of the vent caps as well. So I counted, let's see, it looks like 6 of these, because the bags each have 5 ports. And then we got 4 of the quick lock fitting. One of them is in the bag actually already. All right, so looking back on the order, I guess I misspoke. These are actually, they call them a dry lock, and it's by Flow Right. And these are 1-inch ports for the WakeMakers bags that have 1-inch ports, but they go to the Flow Right dry lock connection. So that's the correction on that. Here's another thing I noticed that I want to point out. You see these plugs, the air vent and / plugs. They have that hole in there, and these have the O-ring to help seal. While these, the dry lock port plugs, do not have an O-ring here. And the reason for that is that there's actually a gasket inside the port on the WakeMakers bags. Okay, so I've got all the ports installed. We've got our dry lock port here for the vent that goes outside of the boat. Vents air first, and then the water eventually fills up if you got your timer set too far. You've got their manual air plug, I guess, for venting if you want to do that. And then at the back here, we've got another dry lock. And I've used the wrench to tighten that down. You don't want to crank on it like excessively, but just snug it up, because if you ever have to remove it, you don't want to have a problem with getting it out. And then up here on the top, we've got those 2 plugged and wrenched, just snug. So that's the bag setup that we're going to install. And then, like I said, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to put 90s in those hoses that come in the backside. Okay, so it occurred to me that some of you might be questioning what the WakeMakers bags look like next to the Fly High Fat Sacs. And so I just happen to have an old fat sack here, and so we're going to take a look. First of all, the fat sacs have the 3/4 inch ports here. These have a 1-inch port, but when you're looking at the hoses, the hose in your system is going to be the same size. So there might be a benefit for the WakeMakers as far as the size of the port inside, the inside diameter in these. Put my finger in there and get up to the knuckle, my finger in here, and pretty much the same thing. Once you get into that first recess, it's the same size. But anyway, as far as construction goes, just feeling the material here and how thick it might be, I would say, just feeling it, it feels about the same thickness to me. I think it's probably got the same material. They probably use the same material, probably the same manufacturer, I don't know. But WakeMakers will be able to tell you that. Here's what the seams look like. It looks like just one overlapped seam. And then the fat sacs, it's a little bit different. Not sure if maybe it's the process that they use, but it looks like they've got one overlap, and then they've got an extra piece of material here that covers where this is. So looks like the fat sac has an extra piece of material there over that part. That's one of the things that I've noticed. Also at these joint seams here, you've got that extra material here and here. And then on the WakeMakers, you don't. So just one overlap there. But they do have a warranty, and everybody's had nothing but good things to say about the WakeMakers bags, and so I don't think there's going to be a problem. And here's one of the intersections on these seams here. So I don't know, I think as long as you're not rough on them, you're not pulling them out every time and fold them up, it's probably going to end up being the same. Some of you might be wondering, well, what about the Fi23 or the Ri21 or 23? I don't know what bag's going to fit, but it's pretty easy. All you do is measure your lockers inside, and if you know what capacity they had, you can just get on WakeMakers site, and they have the universal fit bags, and you just look up the weight, and then you look up, they have different size dimensions that you can choose from that will fit in the back. So but this is the one that I know fits the Fi21, and it's the same weight. So here's the description on the bags. 1-inch dry lock ports, 1-inch seam construction, 2-year warranty, and they claim to be built in Bend, which is where WakeMakers is based. That's pretty unusual for stuff to be actually made in the United States, much less Bend, Oregon, but they have a bag ID on the back, I guess. I'll pull this thing out and see what the bag ID looks like. I didn't even look at the other one. Okay, so this one just, I guess it just has a serial number on it, so at least they can warranty it out pretty easily. I don't know if Fat Sacs have those or not. So one of the tools you're going to need when you do the 90-degree mod for your pipe or your hose is going to be one of these pipe cutters, and it's basically just an ABS or a sprinkler pipe cutter, but it really makes it a lot easier. It just grips there, and you just twist it, and it makes a nice smooth cut versus using a box knife or something like that. While we're poking around the boat here, I just wanted to point out this mat. I bought this on Amazon. I'll try and find a link to it in the description, but anyway, this keeps your bag off the floor so that it can drain, and there's a little bit of airflow around it. That way you don't have the mold problems. And here's a look at the hose that we're going to try and fix. And on the back side here, see they've got it secured pretty tightly with that clamp, so we're going to have to loosen that up a bit to get the hose to have a little more free access so we can put the elbow on it. All right, so I loosened up that clamp, and now we've got some room in here to work on this hose. And so I think what I'm going to do first is remove that clamp just to double check that these elbows are the right size, because you don't want to go cutting your hose up and then find out that you got the wrong elbow, because then you do no surfing at all, which would be quite the shame. But yeah, so that elbow is going to go in here, and it'll turn the corner nicely so that this hose is going to go straight to the bag, and we had just enough extra to pull it up that far. All right, so we got this thing pulled up far enough, and I did check that the 1 1/8 elbows do work, and this is an 1 1/8 flow right dry lock connection. You kind of see down here where this pump runs, the tube, they've got it secured there, and then back up in here. So we're just going to make a cut, so just so we can kind of get to it right about there, put the elbow in, and then run this straight up to the bag. All right, so I decided to go ahead and cut this pinched end off. You can see that thing's never going to be straight again, so we don't want to have that running to the hose, or I mean to the bag, so we cut it right off the end, and that still leaves us enough. You can see here that the back of the bag's going to reach when we get done with this. I'll show you how well these cutters work. Boom, done. All right, so I've been struggling trying to get this elbow in here, and it split the pipe. So it turns out that these pipes are requiring the 1-inch elbow, so make sure you note that before you order. I thought that these hoses were 1/8 inch and 1/8. Now you could heat this up and it would go in there, but since I already ordered these anyway, that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so to quell any debate, here's the two side by side, and the opening inside diameter is pretty much negligible, so I'm not going to feel bad using the 1-inch versus the 1 inch and 1/8. All right, there it is. We've got the elbow in there and it's tucked down in there. Now the other thing I want to mention is there's not enough room underneath this panel, this divider, to put the hose under. It's just not enough. It's like 1 inch. You could drill it out, I guess, if you wanted to, but the engineering on these things, not as thorough as I'd like to see for over $100,000 boats. But with this mod, you can see that you're getting the fitting there on the bottom, so your bag is going to drain more and you don't have that pinch. It does have to go around a corner at the elbow, which is a little restrictive, but I think it's better than that pinch that we had in there in the first place. And your bag, when it's full, is going to be sitting up against the back here, and so that's why I kept this back a little bit, because if you had it up here, it'd be all folded over, and this way the bag's kind of, only going to be folded this little bit here. So that should work, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're all done. Another thing, pay attention to how you put these clamps on. Make sure they're not rubbing against anything important. Put this one underneath so it's not touching the bag. You don't want that, whoops. You don't want that sharp stuff touching your bag and poking a hole in it. So make sure this is all smooth. Okay, so here's the new bag positioned. We've got the two plugs up front. You could put a drain, flip it around, and then maybe it would line up back there better, but I felt like the central position on the drain was better. And then you got the two top ports, and then the single port that's going to go to the drain and fill. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how this thing goes on here, and you can see the bottom of the bag here is just like so, and then we're just going to slip it in right there. So this will kind of go around the side here, and this back in here. All right, now we're going to fill them up and check to see that everything's all planned out. The shape's all off because they were packaged funny, but we're going to fill them up and make sure they're shaped properly, and then suck them dry to make sure that they stay down. So as you can see already, the placement on the valves here, the vent valves, is a lot better. It's not going to get sucked up underneath here where you can't get to it. And you can also manually open these just from sitting here on the seat and let it air out on its own. Whereas the other bags, it was stuffed clear up underneath there, which was really a poorly designed or thought out process. All right, so that's 95%. You can see that one's got a problem because it needs to be drained a little bit and readjusted. But this one looks pretty good. At least the vent is up on top, accessible. It's not stuffed up underneath there. But I'm going to drain them one more time, and we'll just kind of scoot the bag, rotate it a little bit like that, and then the vents will be right square in the middle, and all the air is going to come out. So thanks for watching. I am not a dealer for WakeMakers. They don't have an affiliate program, so I get nothing from you clicking on the WakeMakers links. But if you could subscribe, check out the other videos, get your cutters and your Molly Lube, Molly Coat from the links below. That helps me out with the Amazon links. So anyway, I hope you like it. Give it a thumbs up. That helps the algorithms as well. And enjoy your surfing and wakeboarding. Thanks.